My name is Thomas Bles, I'm a researcher at ICARUS, and I am proud to present to you this introduction to the ICARUS project, which is about improving the uptake of climate change adaptation in the decision-making processes of road authorities. If you're talking about enhancing resilience via adaptation, we started our research with looking a bit backwards. And we saw that there's plenty of research available on resilience. Risk and resilience frameworks exist. There are tools to assess resilience, and also adaptation is being dealt with. At the same time, implementation is lacking. So while a lot is known, it is not possible for road authorities to really get climate change adaptation implemented in their daily processes. We saw the existence of a tactical gap. There's no line of sight, so it's not understood how changes to the assets of the road, how they affect the service that the road provides to society. There is an unclear level of acceptable risk, so it's not known when society or the road authority should accept a certain risk, or what level of resilience should be aimed for. There is an insufficient connection to the decision making. So the resilience assessments thus provide results that are not directly usable in the decision making processes of the road authorities. At the same time, the economic appraisal of adaptation options is not very common. It can be done, but it's not a standard way of working. And finally, we saw that there is an insufficient inclusion of relevant road authority stakeholders in the process of resilience assessments and adaptation. And with that as a basis, we started our project. We were very happy that CEDAR reached out and asked this question to us. So this was a 2-year project from June 2022 to May 2024, in which 5 partners joined forces, which are Deltaris, Technalia, Ramble, RDS from Ireland, and Maple. And you see here the entire team, which was great to work with. The main ICARUS objective is to provide guidance and guidelines on how to build and implement the business case for resilience via adaptation, by balancing the service levels that the road network needs to achieve with the costs and benefits for enhancing resilience. So it's really about balancing what service can be reached by comparing that to the costs that come with adaptation. And then, as the second objective, it's really to ensure that all the existing research and the new ICARUS research can be implemented in the daily practices of the road authorities. That was key to the work that we did. We started with bringing everything together in one framework, the ICARUS framework. You see it here. Here are 6 main steps that one needs to take and that you will find in all resilience assessment frameworks that are out there. It starts with framing, to understand where we are now. What are the procedures? What is the decision-making process that road authorities generally use? Then it's about, okay, do we understand the business as usual? We're not considering adaptation yet. So how are things being done now? And what does that mean when looking into the future? After this assessment, one can look at adaptation options. So what measures can one take? And to make sure that these adaptation options find their way into the daily processes, it's very important to make the decision case for adaptation. So how can we decide what to do? And then we get to the implementation strategy. So to make sure that what has been decided really finds its way to the daily processes. And then at the end, of course, there's this feedback loop and this continuous learning process. Within ICARUS, we have developed several deliverables that all fit within this scheme. I will briefly touch upon all of these deliverables in this presentation, but here you see how we link them to the different steps in this process. As I started with, we have first looked into the baseline. So what is known already and what can we learn from that? And that way we made 3 baseline reports. One on determining impacts and risks due to climate change. The second one on minimum service levels and the decision frameworks that are out there that are used for resilience evaluation. And the third one is the current evidence base of using cost-benefit analysis for road infrastructure projects, especially in the domain of climate change adaptation. And while using these baseline reports as a start, we have developed results in 4 domains. So the first one is on enhancing understanding of resilience and adaptation. The second one is on enhancing the implementation at the road authorities. The third one is specifically addressing nature-based solutions. And then it's about how do we make sure that the results obtained in the project also find its way to the right audiences. Let me start with enhancing understanding of resilience and adaptation. Here we have developed the concept of impact chains. You will find these also in the ISO standards, but we made them specific for roads and provided guidance on how these impact chains can be developed. So impact chains are a tool to enhance the understanding of the way that climate impact drivers will impact the road network. And it combines the hazard, the exposure, vulnerability, and impact. And these impact chains provide really great value in understanding how climate change and extreme weather will affect the road and the society who is depending on these roads. And this is great input to inform the climate change resilience assessments and adaptation analysis that can be done afterwards. As a first step, it's about understanding what the climate event really is. You see it as the blue box. Then secondly, it's about the location. It's about identifying, okay, what is exposed and how does that link to this climate impact driver. Then thirdly, it's about the intrinsic factors of the infrastructure. It's about vulnerability. So how will the infrastructure at the object level be affected by these impact drivers, climate impact drivers? And then as a fourth step, it's really about, okay, and what will then be the impact for the road and for the users and even for society who depends on the road? We have provided several templates, examples that can be used as a start to understand what the situation is in a specific case. And this has been documented in a deliverable D1.2. which is a report on impact chains, vulnerability, and hazard classification. Secondly, we have developed a resilience impact score. And this score can be used to classify hazards based on the impact on resilience. So generally, hazards are being classified by the cause of events. So for instance, related to rainfall or heat or drought. But here we classify them related to the impact that they make. So this can be used to identify the high impact events. We can compare different events, and it aids to the further focus of the assessment. Then a little bit of theory. Here you see a general figure of that is being used to understand resilience. On the vertical axis, you see the functionality, the service that the infrastructure provides to society. And on the horizontal axis, it's the time. And you see that it starts with 100% functionality, and then something happens. This can be an extreme weather event. And then the functionality decreases, and after some time, with proper response and recovery actions, it gets back to the normal level. And the area in blue is kind of the loss of resilience. And all the factors that are in this graph are being used in the impact scoring methodology that we developed. So it is about the event itself. So what's the duration of the event? The longer it takes, the more impact it has on resilience. it's about, and that also goes with the recovery time. Then it's about how deep does the resilience fall. So when the event strikes, what effect does it have on functionality? Is there a big impact on the service, or maybe only a small impact? And it's about the scale of the event. And in this way, we kind of assess and identify the area under the graph. And by using this in a semi-quantitative way, it's fairly easy to fill this in and to be able to compare the different hazards. And this can be used to get a focus towards the resilience assessment that can be done afterwards. This is also reported in that same deliverable that I already pointed at, deliverable 1.2. And a third output of the project is that we provide an adaptation options database. In this database, there are over 500 adaptation options, and they are classified and structured in several ways. So all these measures are identified to an asset scale. They are linked to the life cycle of the road. They are linked to the disaster risk management cycle, so whether they are preventive or maybe more favorable during response and recovery. They are classified as being a nature-based solution or an emerging technology. It is pointed at, okay, which stakeholders will be involved when implementing this measure. A link is being made to the benefits of these measures as well as to the wider benefits for society, and some feasibility criteria are provided. This database is available on our website, and there is guidance available as well in deliverable 2.3, which is about guidelines providing an overview of and characterization of adaptation options. Then fourthly, outputs have been generated to assess the opportunities of adaptation options. And we propose a structure to get more detailed information that can be used when assessing the adaptation options. And this is about, okay, what's the climate impact driver that should be known when assessing this climate adaptation option? What is the critical contextual information that should be known? What's the effectiveness of the adaptation option? Which processes of the National Road Authority are involved, and what would be typical guidelines that need to be updated in order to get this adaptation option implemented. Then also best practices are provided. So what projects have been done in other situations that can be used as a starter when considering this adaptation option. Also, an evaluation of the lifetime of the adaptation option is provided. So this is important to get a feel of when the adaptation option can best be implemented in the project. Also, the dependencies with other developments are made clear. This can be very handy to make the case for adaptation if the adaptation can be linked to other projects, to other developments. And this goes hand in hand with the valuation of the adaptation option in terms of costs, benefits, and wider benefits. And the more clear the wider benefits are, and the more clear they can be linked to other developments of the society or road authority, it will become more clear that the benefits are outweighing the costs of this adaptation option. And then finally, of course, it's very important to have the proper data for assessing the adaptation option. We have provided this information for a set of adaptation options, but the primary goal of this is that we have provided this structure that can be used in other situations that are very case and project specific. Okay, so this was all about assessing resilience and assessing the effectiveness of adaptation options. But now let's make the step to enhancing the implementation of this all at road authorities. And here I would like to focus on 7 outputs of the ICARUS project. The first one is to connect to the context for decision making. And first I would like to point at KPIs, the key performance indicators. We have found that many of the KPIs that are being used by road authorities are not very effective to make the case for decision making relating to adaptation. Because in many occasions, extreme events are excluded from the monitoring of these KPIs. And for instance, if heavy rainfall or heat waves are excluded from the KPIs, it will be very difficult to make the case that adaptation is necessary because there won't be any effect on the KPI measurement. Secondly, it's important to have an appropriate spatial scale. And thirdly, to consider also seasonal KPIs because some climate impact drivers may only occur in winter or in summer, and they may be overlooked when looking at the only annual KPI measurements. Also, to connect to the context for decision making, it's important to understand the decision making itself. So to understand how the National Road Authority is steering towards decisions. This can be budget-based, service-based, there can be other policies that steer the decision-making, and it needs to be understood very well to make sure that your adaptation is fitting into these steering mechanisms. It's important to understand the line of sight, and with this I mean that it's critical to understand how adaptation at the object level is going to change the service of the road network in the end, because that is generally the place where the KPIs are being valued. The KPIs are valued at the functioning of the network. In this same line of thinking, it's important to understand the dose-effect relationship for adaptation options. So to understand how changes of adaptation options are affecting the functioning of the network. And then finally, to communicate with all relevant managerial levels at the road authority. When we are talking about benefits of adaptation measures, the benefits are linked to the prime objectives that the road authorities have. Generally, these are linked to, for instance, availability or safety. But there can be other co-benefits, for instance, linked to sustainability or decarbonization or other wider benefits that also can be considered and that can influence the decision making. So it's important to identify all those benefits in order to make sure that you can connect to the right language for decision making. And what we provide in our deliverable 2.2 are three approaches to make sure that this decision case is being made. They are here in pink, and I will read them in short. So it's about monitoring trends in KPIs to understand how extreme weather is impacting the KPIs. And secondly, it's about changing the asset management guidelines in order to make sure that adaptation finds its way automatically in projects in the future. And the third one, and this is specifically valid for the bigger projects, to optimize climate change adaptation for specific projects individually. This brings me to the ICARUS adaptation implementation process that we developed. You see it here at the right. It's rather complex and is being explained in more detail in some other videos on the website. But in general, the most important messages are that all organizational levels will be involved. You see them at the top of this picture. So the strategic, tactical, and operational level are involved. The prime steps to take are to create awareness, to make sure that the decision context is understood well and connected to, then to undertake the resilience assessment, to work on the adaptation plan, and then finally to make sure that the results are implemented in either asset management or also in implementation in the projects itself. When the resilience assessment resulted in the decision that the resilience actually is not acceptable and needs to be enhanced, adaptation comes at stake. And then, to make the case for adaptation, it can be very beneficial to identify optimum service levels. And an optimum service level would be a service level where additional cost would not anymore lead to additional service for the additional benefits for the users of the road network. And we have provided a step-by-step plan to make sure that all the necessary analysis are being performed to identify this optimum service level. And when following this step, one at the end will get graphs like this, in which the optimum service level can be identified. And here in this example, for instance, this is the case at optimization level 1, which is in the middle of the horizontal axis, where you clearly see in the green line that the net gains of this nature-based solution are highest compared to the reference scenario or the optimization level 2. Then we have identified barriers to adaptation. And in general, these are lack of information, lack of resources, and organizational barriers. If you're talking about lack of information, this is knowledge on climate change, asset information, network performance, and information regarding the KPIs that are being used. It is really critical to have this information to make the case for adaptation. Also, lack of resources is critical. This is about skilled personnel, it's about funding, it's about having enough time to make sure that the proper analysis can be done. And then there are the organizational barriers. There's lack of engagement, lack of planning, lack of buy-in from other stakeholders as well as other people within the organization. And there are some procurement challenges. And we do provide solutions to overcome these barriers. This can be found in the deliverable 2.2 on our website. It's also important to have dedicated communication of results. And this communication can be done firstly to the 3 operational levels at the road authority. So we have the strategic level, the tactical level, and the operational level. And they require different language. So you need to make sure that you dedicate your communication properly. Then, of course, different road authorities will have a different maturity level regarding adaptation. If road authorities are only getting started, it's about raising awareness. When they are already embedding climate change adaptation in their processes, it's about building business cases. It's about showing what the added value is of adaptation compared to the cost that come with adaptation. And when the processes are already embedded, it would be good to have good practices to further underline why it is good that these processes are there. And we do provide several examples of communication. For instance, with the use of maps, storylines, one can use flowcharts, graphs, tables, etc. And this is all also demonstrated in deliverable 3.2, which is a demonstration report showing how principal adaptation measures can be evaluated. And then finally, I get to the training package. And since you are now watching this video, probably you have found this training package already. But there is a recorded video of all the outputs that we have provided in the ICARUS project. And we have presentations to the different audiences, shorter ones for the strategic and tactical level, and more detailed ones for those who really want to make use of the results themselves. And that's more tailored to the tactical and operational level. They are recorded as webinars, and they also are combined with frequently asked questions and a quiz to test whether or not all important messages have come across. All recorded videos can be found also on the website. I'm going to bring you to the topic of nature-based solutions. This has had specific attention in the ICARUS project. And we have one specific output, deliverable 4.2, in which everything that needs to be known about making the case for nature-based solutions is provided. And in this deliverable, you will find drivers and barriers for nature-based solution implementation. There are guidelines for implementation. We provide the evidence base for effectiveness of nature-based solutions. And we show how you can make the case for nature-based solutions to make sure that they are going to be implemented when they are very effective. So if we talk about nature-based solutions, we should first maybe define what is a nature-based solution. And we use this definition that is based upon the definition that is used in the EU. Is the measure inspired and supported by nature? If yes, it could be a nature-based solution. Is the measure cost-effective? Does the measure simultaneously provide environmental, social, and economic benefits? And does the measure help build resilience? And if questions are all answered with yes, we consider this really a nature-based solution. And why should one consider nature-based solutions? Because they provide resilience in a natural way. And it's more and more understood that it's better to work with nature than only to fight against nature. In many cases, nature-based solutions are also cost-effective. They provide multiple benefits, also outside the direct objectives for the road. They are generally very adaptable to changes in the future. They will have a reduced environmental impact when compared to grey solutions. They can enhance social equity. They can make sure that communities get engaged, and they can enhance the reputation of the road authority. There are some drivers for nature-based solutions. So they answer societal challenges. They can be used for carbon storage. They can be used to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. They will enhance biodiversity, and they can provide ecosystem services. But at the same time, there are also barriers. So there is lack of resources. They may be seen as uncertain. So how effective will they really be in the future? There needs to be an organizational engagement, both internally and externally, of the road authority. It's not standard practice in standards and specifications, so they really need to be integrated there. And if that's not the case, it will be very difficult to make sure that these are being chosen as the best adaptation options. And also maintenance is important. It's a natural system that needs to be maintained, maybe more than a grey solution. Then almost at the end of this presentation, when looking at the dissemination of results, first I would like to point at the website and case study portal that we have developed. So you will find the website on icarus.project.ceder.eu. All information is there. And when you click on the dissemination tab, you will find all deliverables as well as all presentations and videos that have been made to disseminate the results of the project. Secondly, on the website, you will also find a case study portal with some best practices of climate change adaptation in countries throughout the world. Also, we have presented the ICARUS results at many workshops and conferences, and we are visible at social media. And this brings me at the end of the presentation. So what are the key findings of the project? Well, it started with that we identified that good resilience frameworks exist already. So there's no need to invent the wheel again, but we need to make sure that resilience is going to be implemented in the daily processes of road authorities. And for that, it's very important to connect resilience and adaptation to the decision context of road authorities. And for that, it's important to make sure that strategic, tactical, and operational level are fully engaged in the process. It's also important to understand and close the tactical gap, which is the link between effectiveness of measures at the object level and the service that the road network in general provides to the society. And then finally, we advocate that nature-based solutions are evaluated just as much as gray solutions because they generally provide really great solutions for adaptation. And with this, I'm going to end this presentation. I hope it was interesting for you. I would like to refer to all detailed other webinars that can be found on the website, in which in more detail all the deliverables and outputs are explained. And thank you for your attention. Goodbye.